You're on the same plane as planning and jokes. Okay. Well, that's better. I won't find it. I wish you would. Unaccepted appreciation.
This is all that was here last year. You haven't signed it yet.
Pretty good odds. Hey, don't tell you.
We've got 7 bells. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town of Waukesha 176th Annual Town Meeting. Tuesday, April 17th, beginning at 7 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there anybody that would like to volunteer to lead the Pledge of Allegiance? I see one over here, one in the back. How about Carl?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job.
Excellent. Thank you, Carl. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Fisher.
Here.
Supervisor Durr.
Here.
Supervisor Radke.
Here.
Supervisor Wolf.
Here.
Chairman Merrick.
Present. We can dispense with the new officials as they've already taken their oath and move on to approve and dispense with the reading of minutes from the 175th Annual Town Meeting held on April 18th, 2017. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve it.
Thank you. And that was Mary Graves in a second. And that is Mike Borchert. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on to reports, and we'll begin with the clerk treasurer. Madam Clerk.
The Clerk Treasurer's Office has been finding ways to help our residents. In the past year, staff has worked on the codification of the code, specifically Chapter 13, the zoning code, and Chapter 12, land use code. Both have had their public hearings and passed the town board and county. We also worked on the rest of the town code and expect to finish that up for a vote in 2018. In 2017, staff had completed the inventory of under the road culverts, address signs, and street signs to help get a better idea of needed maintenance, replacement, or notifications. We are continually working on ways to reduce costs. We started working on replacing the fluorescent bulbs with LED bulbs to help reduce our energy costs. Another area we've worked to reduce cost on is our audit. This year's audit, the town did not incur any additional costs due to needed audit entries. The office worked to compile address flag orders through the year to reduce the cost to the residents. In 2017, using the new process of ordering through the town clerk's office, another 345 address flags were purchased. We expect with the ones ordered through the office and the residents ordering them directly, total signs to be around 500 or 16% of the properties which have occupancy. We are currently compiling another list for May 1st. We changed our building inspector in 2017 and rewrote all the permit forms. We also made all the forms available on the website for planning, zoning, and building permits, and are having applications sent to the inspector electronically. We have started to work on moving the property files to an electronic format. Once the project is completed, the files will be available electronically and reduce the need for running into the basement document room and allow us to respond to resident requests much quicker. In 2017, we set up a shared drive with the inspector, planner, and clerk's office. The process will reduce the need for duplication of documents. With the transition to the new building inspector came a change in administering the non-compliance properties. Clerk Treasurer's Office has worked to get the compliance and complaints rectified quickly. The office worked to dispose of equipment in 2017 as directed by the board, such as the Great All, 2 dump trucks, and 2 fire tender trucks as new equipment was purchased. Poll workers are an asset many times overlooked. The town has some dedicated poll workers that attend training, and in 2017, we saw 2 elections run smoothly. We continue to accept applications from residents that are interested in being poll workers. 32 poll workers were signed up for the 2018-2019 elections. This included 8 brand new poll workers. I'd like to thank some of our longtime poll workers that will not be returning: Sonia, Dan User, Bernie Frank, and Andrew Casper. We also lost Robert Grubb. We appreciate all their efforts to keep the polling places running smoothly for the many years they did serve. I'd like to thank Deputy Clerks Terry Sales and Joan Seifert, as well as Betty Paget, for their contributions to the office. I also would like to congratulate Jim Radke and Mike Durr in their re-election for supervisor.
Excellent. Any questions or comments for the clerk? Then we can move on to Fire Chief, Chief Buchholz.
The department roster, again, varied just a little bit during 2017. We ended the year at 36. We started the year at 38. It's typical to fluctuate a little bit. Actually, right now, we're almost back to 38 again, so it's moving upward. 2017, we responded to 520 calls. 340 of those were emergency medical calls, 66 were vehicle accidents, 114 were fire responses. We gave mutual aid 95 times, and we received mutual aid 151. Out of those 151, 97 of those were shared paramedic responses with our program with the town of Vernon with paramedics. That gives us about a 78% EMS run rate and 22% non-EMS run rate. We maintain 10 vehicles in the town. We did eliminate 2 old tenders this past year and took delivery of a new tender, a new 3,500 gallon tender. It's been a very good asset. It's been very beneficial to the town already. I'll get to that a little bit later in my report. We did receive in 2017 a FEMA grant for $203,000, $203,048 to purchase new breathing apparatus. We're going to replace our breathing apparatus, which was originally purchased in 1997. It's long overdue for an upgrade, so we're going to do that. The materials have been ordered. We'll take delivery of that in 2018. Fire inspections were performed again in the town in 2017, completed as required by the state. All public, business, commercial, industrial, multifamily properties were inspected. We did have an on-site audit from the state in 2017, and we actually did very, very well in our audit. We had very good remarks and high remarks from the state on our fire prevention inspection program, as well as our prevention education. In 2017, there were, in the first half of the year, 176 inspections completed. In the second half of the year, 155 inspections. That includes re-inspections. We had a total of 56 violations over the year. There were no citations issued. The fire department did provide fire prevention safety education programs. In 17, we reached out to approximately 735 children, 180 adults, and we did this just with volunteers from the fire department. Our fire prevention open house and pancake breakfast this year was extremely successful. We had a little over 1,100 people that visited us that day, and we raised just under $8,000 this year. A new adventure for us this year was a new medical director for EMS. Dr. Hells, our past medical director, is retiring, and Dr. Mark Schultz has become our new medical director. With Dr. Schultz, we've continued to expand our paramedic program with the town of Vernon. We started that program in 2016. It continues to grow. Currently, we have 5 paramedics in our department that we share back and forth with the 2 departments. Waukesha County is still working to implement our new digital radio system. The program actually started in 2014. They said that it's supposed to start in 2018. I'm not holding my breath, but we'll see. We'll need new radios maybe before it starts. Who knows? Our MDCs and the vehicles have worked out extremely well. We have MDCs in all of our frontline apparatus, and in 2018, they'll be added to the 2 tenders as well. Our objectives for 2018 are to continue to grow and expand our shared services and mutual aid with neighboring departments, expand on our MAVIS program, continue to establish and grow the EMS program, provide a larger and more flamboyant paramedic system. We hope to get our communications and our capabilities for interoperability throughout the state, throughout the county, up and running. That's going to be a continued battle with the county. Expand on our modifying and our site pre-plans for every business in the town, and establish staffing and operational programs to have folks here on premise as often as possible. One of the things that came off of our to-do list is to work on our ISO rating. We finally, after several years of work, got our final review in January of 2018. And just 2 weeks ago, we got our final report. We went from an ISO rating of 8 to an ISO rating of 3. It's a split rating this time. It's a 3 and a 3Y. The Y indicates that you're more than 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant. And that's a huge benefit for us. It should show up on many people's homeowners insurance. A lot of insurance companies use that to prepare your rates. So the underwriters use those numbers. Again, I'd like to express my appreciation for all the dedicated personnel, the firefighters and EMT of the department. I'm sure I speak for all the staff of the town. We appreciate their dedicated service and their hard work.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief? Then we can move on. I don't see Deputy Moose or any representative from the Sheriff's Department here, so we can move on to the assessor, Marty Keene. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. The assessment in 2017, I've listed in the report, the real estate totaled $898,520. Personal property was just a little bit more than $5.7 million for a total of $904,226,200. Compared to the equalized value, it shows that our assessments are roughly about 88% of what market value is. The equalized value is a value that's derived or developed by the Department of Revenue. It's thought to be the market value. It's done for every city, town, and village throughout the state. It helps with the sharing, for example, of WATC or WCTC, Waukesha County, school districts when they go across different municipal boundaries. Different communities could be assessing at a different rate, so this helps to fairly share those values. Being at 88%, we're below 90%, which is the threshold by the Department of Revenue for when we are in compliance with our assessments. Now, we need to be once every 4 years at least within 90 to 110%. So we're just beginning that non-compliance trek. So I would think that we need to have some discussions with the town eventually to try to remedy that. They will only measure the real estate values of the residential properties. None of the other classes, commercial or agricultural, go above a percentage to be tested. So we just need to get the residentials in line. If we were to postpone the reval until it was like definitely had to be done, you could go 4 or 5 years. But if you're experiencing growth throughout that time, you would experience a situation where the property owners going from that low level to the fair market value would see a very large increase in assessed value. So something to consider. Company, Mark, myself, anybody on staff will be more than happy to have those discussions. This year, we're not doing the revaluation again. We're doing just the maintenance. So we're visiting the properties that have had new construction, demolition activity, sale properties that aren't fitting the norm of what the typical assessment to sale is. So we'll end up having a small portion of properties changed, looking at that new construction. I would anticipate during the month of May, we should get those notices out to folks and shortly thereafter have appeals so that we can wind down the process for this year. Looking at the sales, there was a few less sales this year than the year previous, and we're showing about a 2 to 3% type of economic growth on the sales from 2016 versus the sales of 2017. With that, I'll conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, just a quick question of the assessor of kind of a general nature, but it's my recollection in the recent past, we might have received some reports about some effort that might be undertaken by the state of Wisconsin to change, I'll say the regulations, may not be right choice of words, but as to who would be doing property assessments in the state of Wisconsin, their qualifications and that type of thing to try to get more consistency. I understand that's not a real well-placed question, but you know of what I speak. I thought there was some effort to change the assessment procedures and the people who would be qualified or allowed to do it. Any information on that?
Yes, they have changed the qualifications or the certification levels for assessors for certain communities. There's 3 levels of assessor: Assessor 1, Assessor 2, and Assessor 3. Assessor 3 is the most highest qualification that you can have, and that was really reserved for the city of Milwaukee and the city of Madison. All the rest of the cities, the larger villages, and even some large towns required that Assessor 2 certification, which was, again, the second highest that you could get. The smaller towns and villages didn't need that. They needed an Assessor 1 certification. There has been a change now that if you have over $1 billion of commercial class, you are required to have an Assessor 3 now. So here we only have 57 million, so we're pretty safe that I don't need an Assessor 3 for here. I do need an Assessor 3 in one of the other communities that I have, and it's actually a town, along with 2 other cities. So over $1 billion, you need an Assessor 3, and that's there to say that you need to be more savvy, more higher qualified type of individual. And that was the only thing that that they've done recently. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Then we can move on to the auditor. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Paul France. I'm a senior manager with Baker Tilly in Milwaukee. Prior to tonight, we've provided the handouts that are in the packet, and then they were also in back tonight, so feel free to follow along in that. The town board has hired us to perform an audit and express an opinion on the financial statements of the town. We have done so. We've issued 2 reports. One is the financial statement document, which houses our opinion on the financial statements. We issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance you can receive from the auditors. It's also known as a clean bill of health. So again, when you bring in an external auditor, that is the outcome you're looking to receive. In addition, the other report we issued was a communication to those charged with governance and management. And in that document, very similar to years past, houses some discussion on material weaknesses that we identified during the course of the audit around the segregation of duties, the preparation of the financial statements, and a bank account that is outside of the control of the clerk treasurer's office. That document also has a section that is geared towards governance, which is our 2-way communication, where we are soliciting any feedback or things that you'd like us to do different, look different, kick the tires a little bit harder on for next year's audit, provide some thought-provoking questions in that section of the document, and then the timeline for next year's audit. The third section of that report houses some informational points and some best practice things to consider. And then the 4th section, some required communication that we need to have with the board, highlights the various accounting policies that were adopted, which there were no significant new GASBs or accounting standards that had to be applied during the past year, highlights the accounting estimates that we evaluated during the course of the audit, and ultimately notes if there were any disagreements with management, which there was none. We received full cooperation from the clerk treasurer and her deputies. Audit went very smooth, and it's a pleasure to come out here. Lastly, it lists any non-attest services that we provided for the town and declare our independence from or giving us the ability to do the audit. Third section of my handout is the financial highlights. In the first column there, the general fund. This is the main operating fund of the town. The last number on the bottom of the page, $1,157,000. That is the fund balance or the reserves in the general fund. There are a couple different categories that money is splits into. The first is about $17,000 of non-spendable fund balance, and those are transactions that haven't had an income statement effect that will in future years. So that's not available to spend, and so it's earmarked separate in your fund balance. There's an assigned dollar amount of $121,000. That is next year's transfer, or so 2018's transfer from the general fund to the capital project fund to stay within the policy that the board has adopted related to the unassigned category. The unassigned category has to be between 25 and 40% of next year's, so 2018's operating budget. And so that amount, $121,000, will be transferred to the capital project fund. And the unassigned category is 40% of your operating budget. So a very healthy fund balance reserve in the general fund. We'd recommend that that's somewhere between 10 to 25%. So a very well positioned fund balance. Next column there is the capital project fund. That fund has just over $1.5 million, and that is available to use for future capital projects. Last column is a combination of a number of funds. This would be the Act 102 fire funds, fire donations, fire inspection, and debt service. And the combination of those funds have just over $107,000 of fund balance. And the next page of the handout summarizes the general fund's budget to actual for the year. And at the bottom number there in the first column had a change of fund balance in the general fund of just over $66,000. The bulk of the change comes from the transfer out category, which is the line right above that. That transfer out is moving monies from the general fund to the capital project fund in 2017. Similar to the policy that I mentioned earlier, there was $241,000 transferred in 17 to stay within compliance with that policy. And then some other monies transferred to establish some new funds, the fire inspection fund being the biggest part of that. Revenues came in over budget by $111,000. Biggest pieces of that, there were more building permits this year, brought in about $25,000 of additional money. And ambulance revenue was up about $35,000. Expenditures were under budget by about $140,000. Even though the building permits went up, the spending was less than what the town had planned to spend by about $20,000. And then there were fire wages savings of about $30,000 last year. So again, general fund, very healthy position. A good budget put in place and followed throughout the year. So with that, I'd open the floor to any questions that you may have for me.
Supervisor Fisher.
Just a quick one, and I think it's just really kind of reiteration, but for clarification, on the general fund balance is the assigned, the $121,536 that is yet to be moved, and the board may take that up at our next meeting or whatever. That is correct me if I'm wrong, that's the minimum amount that we could move to stay under the 40 or at the 40% threshold. Is that correct? I mean,
Correct.
The board conceivably could use its discretion to move more, but we need to move that to stay within the policy parameter of not more than 40% of the.
You're correct. You could bring that all the way down to 25%.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You've been our auditor for 4 or 5?
4 years. 4 years.
4 years. Has the audits gotten consecutively easier, simpler, less complicated for you to perform?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, Kathy had made reference before to the limited number of journal entries that we made. And journal entries would be when we come in, we get what we call a trial balance from town staff. We use that to audit to the supporting documentation. When we began doing the audit, we were making somewhere between 15 and 25 journal entries to get the books to a fair representation in line with the accounting standards that we need to follow. We had 2 very minute entries this year that were more reclassifications to properly show expenditures in the right function. So, yes.
Well, I think Clerk Nicholas and her staff deserve great credit for that, and
Absolutely.
we will be expecting a discount.
I think if you look at the fees, they have definitely come down over time to represent the less work.
Any other questions for the auditor? Then we can move on to comments from the chairman. First of all, I want to thank everybody for showing up, and it's been my pleasure and honor to serve the town of Waukesha again for another year. I want to thank all of the elected officials, especially Supervisor Radke and Supervisor Durr for their hard-fought reelection wins. All of us staff, DPW, the office staff, the fire department for their work, our appointed commissions, and members of the commissions for their service and efforts, and of course our contractors. Thank you for your service and efforts to the town of Waukesha. That's all I have to say. And we can move on to set the town meeting, 177th meeting. I'm sorry, citizens' comments. Went right by it. Citizens' comments. Anybody wishing to speak?
I'm not going to say very much. I'm Mary Graves on Town Line Road. I just want to commend your public works people. They are just tremendous in getting this snow removed. And even though you knocked down my mailbox, it was put up when I was out there Sunday. The one man that was out plowing, he said he was there from 3 o'clock in the morning and he was just about pooped out. I'll tell you. But he took down my address, and our neighbor's box was knocked down also, and he said that it should be put back up on 2 days, and that was happened, and it's put up better than it was before. Yeah, thank you so much for all their hard work. It was really tremendous to get home and not have to worry about getting a new mailbox. Thanks.
Thank you. And DPW Director Jerry, would you please relay that to your crew? Thank you.
See, Mr. Chairman, can we just ask Assessor Keen, as long as he's here tonight, am I right, is it not a state law that if the DPW knocks down your mailbox when your tax bill is supposed to be delivered, you don't have to pay that year? Is that correct? No, it's not?
No, if you don't receive it, you still are obligated to pay it.
Any other comments? Going once, going twice, then we can move on. Set the annual town meeting, 177th meeting of Tuesday, April 16th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the town of Waukesha. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
And that was Mrs. Durr. And a second? I saw a hand somewhere. Mike Borchert. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to number 9, set the date for the 2018 public hearing to present the proposed 2019 budget, Tuesday, November 13th, at 7 p.m. Town of Waukesha Town Hall. Is there a motion? And a second. Mary Graves. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And lastly, a motion for adjournment. If nobody does it, we're here all night. And a second.
I will.
You can in about 12 years. And that was Mrs. Durr. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.